All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back. We are so excited to talk about the Oscar nominations finally. We're going to do our reaction show. It's my fault that we are delayed on this. I was in Chile celebrating my Chilean queen, Carrie Mulligan.
Not her.
Chilean queen, Chile Mulligan. Uh, Yes, but there's so much to talk about. Before we dive in category by category, maybe we chat about our overall impressions.
Yeah.
Big thoughts. What do we think?
That I think the two of us sort of called it that Barbie was gonna, I don't even want to say like underperform, but that it was not gonna hit double digits. And I think there were still a couple of surprise nominations that got thrown at it, and we'll get into it, I guess, later. But I think honestly, from sort of like the punditry, kind of like the stuff that I had been reading, you and I were pretty set on Robbie and Gerwig missing,
Mhm.
and others weren't, and we were right.
I have to give it to you. You called the Barbie bubble popping. I think before anyone else did, and I started to get on board when I saw BAFTA and realized that there was yeah the momentum was running out. So, but I want to give you
Which,
special kudos.
but I mean, like even with BAFTA, I think I did well to sort of like predict Barbie, but then BAFTA made us think that All the Strangers was gonna happen. And
Right.
then even though we did say that Andrew Scott missing was a bit of an omen, I like it looked weird.
Yeah, that
Um
was looking back. That was the canary in the coal mine of.
a little bit. So I would say ups and downs with BAFTA. I think with Barbie, I just never really gelled with the idea that people would embrace, I guess critics or like the industry would embrace it as much as just like viewers did. It made a lot of money, and I think that was the main reward for it.
Yeah.
um I still don't necessarily think it's an Oscar movie, but it was obviously hard to ignore. It was the movie event of 2023, so I get why it's in the mix, but I also feel like um if I were to compare and contrast, Barbie would not stand out as a movie that gets a ton of Oscar nominations year in, year out.
Yeah, I would agree. Um, I think you're spot on, and uh, the reaction to its sort of lackluster nomination haul and Robbie and Gerwig specifically missing is was hilarious. Um,
Oh my God. Oh my God. Because also, can we just, they did not miss. They're both
both
nominated,
nominated.
just not
Yes.
where people wanted them to be, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
Robbie is nominated for producing it. Greta is nominated for writing it. They're fine. They're fine. They're good. They're golden. They're gonna
Right.
be there. It's okay.
And also, most likely, another female director was the one who knocked Gerwig out, Justine Triet. Um, so it's like, I don't know. It was just, there was a hysteria immediately after that was quite
it it
humorous.
just it just felt like grasping at straws in terms of like you want to make this feminist argument in a year where there's actually a female director nominated, and also you want to sort of like call out like anti-feminism in best actress, which is literally a category that's supposed to award five women.
Right.
That's not how feminism
Make
works.
it make sense.
That's
Yeah.
yeah, make it make sense. It was, and I mean, I started seeing like petitions and like change.org, and I'm like, we are losing the plot here.
Yeah.
We have collectively just lost the plot.
Yeah, we need
Yeah.
to put down our RBG, notorious RBG mugs, and
It was,
take a
yeah,
breath.
it was entertaining at first, and then I became quickly really annoyed with it, and then
Yeah.
and now it seems to sort of like have died down because I mean it takes, I think, a couple of weeks for things to settle down, and then you're actually sitting with the list nominees, and you're like, oh, actually, I'm happy about this person, and I'm happy about this other person or this
Hmm.
movie, which is where you should be coming from in the first place.
Yeah.
It's meant to sort of like help us celebrate movies that we love and people that made the cut.
Hmm.
And that's all there is to it.
And overall, I feel like there weren't any like they weren't terrible nominations overall. I think they were pretty decent. Kind of what we were expecting in a lot of categories. Um, no big like Lakeith Stanfield surprises.
Yeah, no, I would say even people that we weren't expecting necessarily make it in were still in our top tens.
Yeah.
It was one of
Um,
those years, yeah.
I think yeah, the America Ferrera nomination might be the biggest, but we'll get to that when we get
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Uh, and by biggest, I mean the biggest thing to happen to humanity ever. It's such an amazing nomination. Oh God, almost vomited when I
Mm.
said that. All right, uh, yeah. So I think there's some great things. There's some expected things, some slightly bummer things, but we'll talk about it all as we go through each category. Uh,
Yes.
at the bottom of the list, because it is the least important,
Last
is
but also least.
last and least is visual effects. So the nominees are The Creator, Godzilla Minus One, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, and Napoleon.
So they had one job here and they execute it correctly, and I have no complaints. I don't care. I'm great.
Yeah,
Phenomenal. I'm just so happy. Yeah.
yeah. I'm very happy with the guy. Is this the first Godzilla movie to ever be nominated for an Oscar?
Yeah, as well as Mission Impossible.
Oh, right, yeah. Um,
I don't know. I feel like Godzilla has been, and I'm talking about the Japanese like Toho Godzilla, has been sort of like consistently deserving of more attention than it's gotten outside of Japan. Shin Godzilla, which came out 2017, a few years ago, just as good at Godzilla Minus One. It's just that it does not get distributed or does not, reach out to as many people as it should, and people don't get to see it. And yeah, um, it is. It's just I'm a Godzilla stan. He's my good baby boy. I love him so much. I particularly love the Japanese Godzilla in contrast with like the US one. That's they kind of framed him more as like he might look like a threat, but he's actually our protector. In Japan, he just comes out of the water and he just starts breaking shit.
yeah.
That's all he does, and that's perfect and wonderful. So yeah, I think it was well overdue. It is a great nomination. I hope it wins. I haven't looked into the category yet to sort of like make up my mind, but I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility.
Oh, yeah, not at all, because I think it has um, a lot of love for it. It's such a great movie, and it did so well at the box office. Um, and the competition, I've only seen three of the five, so I
Mm,
can't speak on Napoleon or Mission Impossible.
mm.
But Guardians is like it's very nice, it's very pretty, very standard. I think Marvel. The creator is pretty good to look at. Um, there's nothing that stands out in my mind from the creator. Um,
I've seen actually Mission Impossible, but I haven't seen the creator yet. And I'd say Mission Impossible, it's your sort of like expected, sort of like very functional visual effects
mhm.
that honestly have been kind of consistent across all these movies. Like I don't understand exactly what made them decide, oh, this is the one where we finally notice the franchise. Which I mean, you you could like it or not, but it is, I think, a very technically proficient, impressive franchise
Mhm.
for what it is. They're well crafted
Mhm.
movies. They've always been. And yeah, it's just a bit of sort of like it's a bit of an oddity for me that now it happened for this one. But I think also this is of the last few ones that have come out, this is probably the one that got the most exposure. Like I heard about this one, that it was coming
Yeah.
out, Vanessa Kirby was in it, and maybe that was also part of why, well, how it ended up on the map, I think, just, with
Mhm.
this feeling of like renewed interest for it, which great. It is a perfectly serviceable film. It's long, and Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise in, and yeah, yeah.
Oh, also something interesting. Neil Corbold
Hmm.
is nominated for three of these movies.
For which one or
He,
ones?
he's nominated for Napoleon, Mission Impossible, and The Creator.
So he might realistically
So he's
just
he's
no
nominated
wins.
three times.
Oh, that
I
would suck. I have a feeling that the creator is probably the front runner here, just because the people have been talking about it for a while in terms of like special effects and
yeah,
yeah, just
I
the visual kind of
yeah, it's like the mix of Guardian is just like it's has the Marvel uh
stamp on it. Yeah.
stamp on it, so like people only take it so seriously.
Yeah.
If they go with most visual effects, Guardians could win, but yeah, I would say Kratos probably ahead, and then Godzilla minus one is definitely a spoiler.
I'm just sort of like with Guardians, it's been kind of weird because didn't it miss from it missed out completely on makeup, like wasn't
Yeah,
even shortlisted, which I thought was it was bizarre. It was just I don't think people were expecting that to happen.
yeah.
So I don't know in general how people feel about it. I saw it like 2, 3 nights ago, I want to say. Um, it's not the special effects are not amazing. But it's very in keeping with sort of like the Marvel
Yeah,
aesthetic. So if you like it, you like it.
yeah.
That's yeah.
I don't think people are. Yeah, my sense is that people aren't like rushing to reward it,
Mm, mhm.
especially since it missed out on makeup. You're right, because it had like it broke the record for most prosthetics in a movie, um, which usually the makeup category loves. More
Very, very
like
strange.
yeah. So it feels to me like yeah, the creator of Godzilla minus one will take this.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Yeah.
And then I don't know what Napoleon does visual effects wise, but I'm sure it's just like crowd
They
like
made
and
him
smoke.
look like he's not asleep. I don't know. I that trailer, I can't get over that trailer. I mean, it is so funny because I think we mentioned it in one of the other episodes how he basically, and I'm talking like Joaquin Phoenix, he basically had no game plan for this movie, and he
Oh
showed up like 2 weeks before they started production. He showed up. Who's the director? Ridley Scott.
yeah,
Yeah, he showed up at his place and he was like, I don't know what I'm doing with this character. I don't
yep.
know where I'm supposed to go with it. And I feel like that was never resolved. It was just never resolved.
That
And
that
yeah.
is the exact perception I got watching the trailer. It's like Joaquin
Yes.
Phoenix just walked onto set and said, "Put a hat on me," and then hit record, and I'll just figure it out.
And he didn't. I don't think he did. I don't, and I
Yeah,
mean, I haven't seen it, so I shouldn't be, but it doesn't look like he did. So yeah, and I have no concept of what the special effects might be like in this film outside of probably like battle stuff,
mhm.
which sure.
Yeah, which I don't think people will be rushing to reward. I mean,
Yeah.
did wait, no, All Quiet on the Western Front did not win visual effects. It won production design. Never mind.
Well, production design, I think, did it win makeup?
I think it won makeup and production design.
Okay. It won a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, but
But
didn't
I
win visual
think
effects.
Yeah, but I think I think it was considered like a more high profile kind of offering
Yeah,
for what it was. And that's why I think like maybe the creator has been kind of like the word mouth about it. The word of mouth about it, I think, has been sort of like about, oh, it's an independent movie, but it looks really expensive.
yeah,
And it is really, really stunning and impressive to look at. And I think that probably plays more of a factor in terms of like people paying attention to this stuff because realistically, a lot of people for these categories, they just kind of like check off boxes based on what they recognize.
right.
So yeah.
Um, I think you're right, and it's also kind of cool that I think the top two in this category are smaller budget films, The Creator and Godzilla minus
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
So that's cool
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's not just about what you do, like with a Marvel fight sequence. Like that's just not like that became synonymous with visual effects. I
I
think
mean,
over the past couple decades, but there's so
yeah.
much more different types of visual effects that
It's just like this really shows that you can make a movie on a budget. I want to say on a budget, but like still make it look like Godzilla does, which
Right.
is yeah, like a world-class state of the art show,
Yeah.
basically.
You
Yeah.
don't just, or you, I mean, you don't have to spend 300 million to make whatever Aquaman was, and that those terrible special effects,
Mm-mm.
you know. So
Mm.
anyway, last and least, visual effects. All right, let's get to a juicier category. Let's do film
Yeah.
editing.
Oh.
That's next in my list. If you have problems with the order of this list, talk to Variety. I'm on the Variety website.
Take it up to
Film
them.
film editing nominees: Anatomy of a Fall, The Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer, and Poor Things.
My question is, do you think this is a top five in picture?
That is a great question. Because Holdovers missed director.
Yeah.
Uh, it probably is the top five. I would
Oh,
say,
I'm literally just asking. It's not a rhetorical question. I have not decided yet. But it looks like if it's not the top five, it might be the top six or the top seven.
yeah,
The only one I'm a little iffy about is Killers, honestly.
yeah. I think honestly, Zone of Interest would be the other film I would consider possibly top five.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
and I think it would take probably Killer's place. You're right. I don't think the Holdovers missing director means as much because there's so much love for the film.
It is strange, but it was a strange category the entire time. We knew we were going to lose a couple of big names.
Yeah, yeah,
I think pretty much everybody went for five there from what I read, and it was going to be either Payne or Lanthimos or Scorsese, and you kind of just had to like close your eyes and pick one.
hmm
And I had picked Lanthimos, and you know what? I stand by that.
yeah. Yeah, I think I was 4 for 5 as well. We'll get there when we get there, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think there's any major surprises here. Uh, I guess Zone Barbie not making it might be a small I don't,
I would say so. I think
surprise.
more people were predicting than not, but also I think here in cinematography, it was also where I started seeing some cracks in terms of like Barbie's support across the board.
Mhm.
I would say that Holdovers is maybe a little bit of a surprise here.
Yeah, I
But
wasn't expecting it here.
it speaks to the strength of the movie, and I think generally if you're like a top two, top three movie like in best picture, that overrides kind of like any concerns related to like the craft, because if it's good it's good, and if it's not showy it's still good. And
Yeah.
that's what happened here. I do think it's a really well crafted, edited movie,
Mhm.
so it's just not as showy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, I feel like Oppenheimer is likely going to take it.
Mm,
I
that's
would
fair.
love to. I'd love to see Anatomy win.
Me too. Me too. I
That to
thought
me
it
was
was
the best.
probably, yeah, my is it was my favorite of this lineup, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and not just as a film, but in terms of the editing specifically.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. The courtroom stuff is just so well told and sort of like spliced together.
mhm.
There's a real sense of like tension, and it feels dynamic. It's just good. It's just good.
Yeah, and we have Queen Thelma back for Killers. Not her
I
best work, in
mean,
my opinion.
is there any editing in that movie?
Like there's some moments where you're like, oh, that's really like that transition was really cool, or that like the slow motion when they discover the oil on the land. Like there's some moments that
Hmm.
are really beautiful, but then there's just moments where I swear to God she just fell asleep and woke up 3 hours later and was like, oh, I should make a cut there.
I mean, I don't know exactly how Scorsese works with her. And I mean, this is probably documented, I just haven't read about it, but I don't know how much agency she has in terms of like executive decision. I'm cutting out like 20 minutes here
Right.
without, I don't know that she gets to do that. Clearly here is just an example of a film that just needed to be at a minimum like 45 minutes shorter.
Absolutely.
And that I think would have made me look at it in a different way. Yeah.
And I think to me that is such a I think people think of editing as like fancy cut tos and transitions and like lots of cuts, like Baby Driver, which
Mhm.
it is in some ways, but it's also like, is the film exactly as long as it needs to be? Are the scenes exactly as long as they need to be? It's timing as well, you know,
It's pacing. Yeah.
pacing
And
exactly.
that was the main thing that for me felt off
Oh, it was off the entire time.
the whole time. The whole time. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so like, I know she's a legend. She's done some incredible work in the past. And not, I, I, I want like I do wonder if they'll give her kind of a if she might win because just because of her big name.
It
But
might be her. It's going to be her, like her fourth one if she wins, I
yeah,
think. Yeah.
but to me, it would not be of everything I've seen. I actually have still not seen Oppenheimer. Of all the films, I've seen
I don't,
everything except
I
for
don't,
Oppenheimer.
I don't blame you. I don't.
um, but Anatomy, Holdovers, and Poor Things are all far superior in their editing. I think.
Um, I would I would say that Oppenheimer, like a lot of these sort of like tech nods, I don't think there's really a lot to be read into that. It's just
Mhm.
it is a very well crafted movie that everybody loved. It is very, very polished, well made. It just, I think, checks all these boxes in terms of like cinematography, sure, editing, sure, sound design, sure. All of it is just sort of like lumped in together.
Mhm.
Is it a well edited movie? Sure, but again, it feels like one of those movies where the editing is mostly sort of functional. It gets the job done.
Mhm.
I actually found the big scene with the detonation of the bomb very underwhelming for how it is shot and edited. In
Interesting.
particular. So yeah, um, I uh, uh, I think it was an expected nomination that just reflects just how strong the movie is in general. Yeah.
Gotcha. Um, but yeah, I think it's the front runner here.
It is. It is a
Yeah.
front runner in a bunch of these. Yeah.
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 All right, let's move on to production design. So the nominees are Barbie, Killers of the Flower Moon, Napoleon, Oppenheimer, and Poor Things. Was not
I don't
expecting
know how it went.
Napoleon.
Me neither. No, I don't know how I went with my predictions here. Probably like 3 out of 5. On balance, I think this is a category where Poor Things could score a win. Um,
Yeah, I
but then
think
again, it's probably Barbie's to lose.
yeah, I think Barbie is this is the one thing outside of song I expect it to win. But you're right,
Mm.
Poor Things. If if the sun goes down on Barbie hard, Poor Things I think is a close second right now.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have a problem with any of these films getting nominations here. I mean, I haven't seen Napoleon, but I guess the others. I do get why they would do well here. I just feel like Barbie is the most immediately recognizable one in terms of like people that have played with Barbie, people that are familiar with Barbie will immediately connect to sort of like the aesthetic,
Yeah,
sort of like the presentational aspect of the film. They did a great job with just the set design and just how realistic it is. I mean, realistic it is to like how we imagine sort of like Barbie Land would look like.
yeah,
But a lot of like the play sets that you see, I don't know, at Target, whatever, Walmart, I think it's very evocative of that kind of look.
yeah.
And it's been, I think, the front runner the entire
I
time.
think so, and I
So
think it's as far as in my mind, it's the only one I feel like that has a little bit of a narrative behind it. Because I remember there'd be stories about how much pink paint they used on the
yeah, the
set. Like,
shortage of like, yeah.
yeah, so like there's I don't know how much that matters or factors in, but that I think helps. It is impeccable production design. Like thoughts about the movie. Like I loved the movie. There's weaknesses to the movie. I understand. Like
Yeah.
it's not an Oscar-y movie overall, but the production design to me is pretty remarkable. So yeah, I think it's the front runner. Poor Things absolutely could come in and swoop because there's also some pretty fantastic production design of Poor Things.
Mm.
Napoleon is a hat and um,
Yeah.
some like guns, and I don't think that has
Yeah.
any chance. Killers
No.
has a great production design, I will say.
It does.
Um,
It's very, I think, striking and sort of like it looks realistic and sort of like how they reproduce that entire, I think, location. Yeah.
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 And then again, I haven't seen Oppenheimer, but I've seen like the fedoras. So great, good for them. Great
Oppenheimer
gowns, beautiful
is
gowns.
Oppenheimer is definitely, yeah, it's definitely a movie with art direction in it. There's, yes, they built movie sets for it and then they went and shot the movie there. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think when we do our final predictions, we'll have a final prediction podcast, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I probably will have Barbie winning two, and this is probably the one of the two that'll have it winning. Um, but
I'm either two or three right
yeah,
now. So, but yeah, more two than three, I think, if I were to pick today. Yeah.
yeah. Um, well, let's talk about one. It's definitely not winning, which is
Mm.
makeup and hairstyling. The nominees are Golda, Maestro, Oppenheimer, Poor Things, and Society of the Snow.
um, well, okay. I just want to say that. No, because I think I don't know if we talked about it or not, but I knew that Golda was likely gonna get in here. But I have so many issues with the makeup in that movie, from what it looks like to the amount of makeup that was needed for an actress to look like a real life figure that she had really no right to be playing in the first place.
Hmm.
Um, I just am a little baffled, but I think this is not a surprise. I think most people were predicting it to actually get in here and get
Yeah.
the nomination. Yeah.
Makeup and hairstyling, their track record for nominating just bad prosthetic work is pretty astonishing.
It's been sort of, I think, almost like disheartening over the years just to see how narrow their scope is in this category, specifically like what they tend to think makes for good makeup, or like makeup that is like functional to the film or like true to life,
Hmm.
when you consistently see stuff like Golda then make it in and or win.
Right.
Um, it's, yeah, it is. I think yeah, it's unfortunate. It is unfortunate, and I don't think it helps that the guild itself seems to sort of like operate that way, because then the nominations that you're presented in terms of like the pool of five movies that you can pick from, it's just not great to start with, and then you end up probably with a winner that's not that great.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Then things like the whale win and
woof. Did Iron Lady win here?
yes, it
Yeah,
did.
I mean, like stuff like that should not happen. Should not win the most important like film award there is.
Right.
That should not, yeah, that shouldn't happen. So, yeah, it is, and it's sort of like I think a lot of these guilds just, or they just kind of do whatever they want and it kind of goes unchecked, and there's different rules for like different categories. It's just sort of like whatever goes, and this is one of those categories where you really see that.
Yeah.
Meh.
Can't say I'm excited about. I mean, I think Poor Things had some pretty good
Sure, yeah,
makeup, but not anything I'm like rate like it needs to win or I'm raving about. The coolest thing they did was Catherine Hunter, and her body tattoos.
yeah,
But I haven't seen Society of the Snow, but I'm assuming
I
there's
have.
probably some good makeup in there.
It's great, it should win.
Yeah.
But again, it is the kind of makeup that is sort of like more functional to the story, as in it tells the story of what's happening to these characters alongside everything else, like the acting and just the setting of it, and just it is functional to
Mhm.
the story. But it is not Pancake Face. So
Right.
yeah, yeah.
My big fear is that Maestro is going to win here.
Which, I mean, I haven't even talked about it. Yeah, it's in there, and wow,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate. It is unfortunate.
It's just, yeah, kind of a sad category.
I mean, there's really that movie could have been the same exact movie had he not bothered with the prosthetic nose.
Hmm. But 10,000% he insisted on the nose because Rami Malek had fake teeth when he beat him for
He had all the
Bohemian
fake teeth,
Rhapsody.
literally all of them in his
Yeah.
mouth at once.
Yeah, he had 6 rows of fake teeth.
Yeah.
And so Bradley Cooper was like, I need some like big makeup gimmick to win an Oscar.
No, literally, he knows what he's doing. Like
Oh,
he knows what he's doing. So he's very
10,000%.
much like out there, like, oh, this worked for Nicole Kidman, and then this worked for Rami Malek, and then this worked for Brendan Fraser, and let me look into it. Yeah. And again, completely unnecessary prosthetic work that adds nothing to the movie. He actually looks ridiculous in the first half of the film, especially. It is just not a nose that belongs on that face.
No, it's
So it's yeah, no.
it might as well just be a nose with a hand that outstretches that just says "Give me an Oscar"
Mhm.
on the tip of it.
Yeah.
Like that's
Like a line coming out like, give it,
give
give
me
me,
the Oscar, give me
give me
the
that,
Oscar.
give me that. Uh
All right, I want to leave this depressing category.
yeah, yeah.
Let's go to animated film. The nominees are The Boy and the Heron, Elemental, Nimona, Robot Dreams, and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
I feel like this is a pretty good lineup.
Yeah,
I was rooting for Suzume to make it in. I just really love that movie. I am not surprised that any of these would make it in. Robo Dreams, I think, was a little bit on the outskirts of this category, and I haven't seen it. But I feel like from the general reaction, a lot of people are really, really happy that it got in, which is wonderful. It's not gonna win, I don't think. But I think overall this is one of the better categories, probably.
yeah. I think it's notable that Wish didn't make it in, the
Hmm.
big Disney film from the year,
Which
because it
was
was.
what's it about? Do you know
It's apparently
what it's
just
about?
kind of a pastiche of like all these in like Easter eggs of past Disney films.
Yeah, so like four people have described it to me like that, and I still don't understand it.
I don't. Yeah, that's as much as I know.
Right. I'm
Um,
like, okay.
so I feel like it's between Boy and the Heron and Spider Man,
I think so.
and I want to because my preference is Boy and the Heron. I want to predict Boy and the Heron.
Hmm.
Uh, I think there's just so much respect for him, and even though I guess this is not technically his last film, it's been since Spirited Away. I think since he
Hmm.
won.
Hmm.
So that's close to 20 years, right? More than 20 years.
Jesus. Yeah, I think you might be right. Something
Which
like that. Yeah.
yeah, because I was yeah. So I think there could be a push for him.
Um, I think actually my preference would be Spider-Man of the two.
Hmm.
But I'm never against um him getting Oscars.
Yeah, I
Like
wouldn't be upset with either because both Spider-Man
he
is
could
great
get
as
one a
well.
year and I'd be happy. Yeah. 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 But I
Uh,
think it's yeah, one or the other.
yeah. So this is Spider-Man's only. It didn't get any other. It didn't get in for song or anything, right?
No, I think there was a little bit of I think people were surprised that it missed in score. I think that's
That's what it
where
was. Yeah.
I think that yeah. Which again, not a great sign, but then I think Boy and the Heron also ended up missing there, and it was conceivable that he could have gotten in
Mhm.
for best score as well. I know you were like really, really
I
rooting for
really
that.
hoped it. I love that
Yeah,
score, and
yeah,
it got the Golden Globe nomination,
yeah,
but it was a stacked category. So
yeah, it
also
was.
I forgot that John Williams is still alive. So
I predicted him literally because he is alive and
he's
present
alive.
and
Yeah.
breathing. Yeah. Um, yeah.
We'll get to score when we get to score,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's a fight between Boy and the Heron, Spider Man.
Hmm.
Let's move on to international feature
Mm.
film. We have Il Capitano from Italy, Perfect Days from Japan, Society of the Snow from Spain, The Teacher's Lounge from Germany, and The Zone of Interest from the United Kingdom.
I would like to know from France how they feel about
I
this.
saw Zone of Interest last night, and they played the Taste of Things trailer before it,
Mm.
and I couldn't stop laughing. They fumbled it so bad.
It's literally a country just picking up a gun and shooting themselves in the foot and then being like, you know what? I have another foot. So let me just actually yeah, yeah. And I feel like, and I mean, this is allegedly, this is just stuff that I read. The reason behind not sending an enemy had nothing to do with the movie. There was like political sort of stuff going
Yeah, that's what
on.
I've heard.
Yeah, that I think made, or I think just the commission there decided, Taste of Things might be the safer thing to send. Not realizing that already at that point, people were talking about Anatomy as a possible Best Picture contender, which then
Hmm.
it was what literally that's what happened.
Yeah,
Um, and I mean, if you and I know that, why didn't they know
right,
that?
exactly. Yeah, I heard the theory I heard was that is because she criticized Macron in
Yeah,
her Cannes
yeah,
speech,
yeah.
which, like, come on, everyone hates Macron. Like, is it really that
To
big a
get in
deal?
line.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So to just, yeah, to cut off your nose to spite the face or whatever that phrase is, the way they did is just hilarious and dumb. And they screwed it up. They I think would have, as great as Zone of Interest, Anatomy would have won this category.
There's just, and also like this has nothing to do with anything, but there's like an internal battle in this category historically between Italy and France in terms of like most wins and most nominations. And anytime Italy gets in and France misses out, I'm like, yes. That's just purely me. Apart from the fact that Io Capitano is actually a really good movie. Apart from that, yeah, yeah. That's just petty like
Yeah.
bullshit, but
Well,
it informs how I live in this category. Yeah.
well,
Mm,
I still need to see it. I've heard it's great, and
mhm.
I'm sure the taste of things is good too and fine. Like it looked decent. It looked like
I mean, Juliet is in it, so it's
she's always
automatically
great.
like, yeah.
It looked like belly poke, uh, Phantom Thread, but with cooking.
It
Um,
looks like to me, it looks like Chocolat like two. We're 20 years later, we're retired and we're still in the kitchen. It's
yeah.
not even, but it doesn't even matter because I think this category is locked and loaded. We know
Yeah,
what's gonna happen here,
it's Zone
and
all the way.
yeah, 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 yeah,
I would put if I had to pick a number two, I'd pick probably Society of the Snow right now,
yeah. Sure, makes sense.
but just
Yeah,
based on it getting other nominations and um, the buzzer on it, but it's a distant too, I think.
it's on Netflix, so it's widely available. And it actually does stick the landing in a really, really effective way. I watched it and I found it fairly hard to sit through in a sense that it could turn off people, especially the first half of the movie. It's just rough. It's just a
Yeah.
rough movie to watch. But then I think it really does stick that landing, and I was crying at the end.
Oh wow.
I tried,
Yeah.
I tried my best, but I was like, no, no, it's happening. So in that sense, I totally, and also I think I appreciated the fact that it doesn't really fetishize the like the big sort of like, reveal that they've been,
Yeah.
surviving by doing what they're doing. It's just I think introduced in a very sort of like subdued but like effective way. Um and it doesn't like in Alive, for example, like the American movie about the same events where it's like literally about like cannibals. It's not like that. This is
Yeah.
this is actually a more, it's almost more of like a character study in a way of like survival and like how to adapt to like circumstances are like unthinkable. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I still need to see it, but I'm looking forward to it. I've seen Alive, the movie from the '90s, multiple times, so I know the story decently. So
Yeah.
I know the big thing about it.
Yeah.
But I'm very curious to see how they handle different parts of the story. So I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to it. But speaking of international films, there's one that I think both thought had a chance in the here that did not show up here, but it did show up in documentary feature film.
Hmm.
So the nominees for documentary feature are Bobby Wine, The People's President, The Eternal Memory, Four Daughters, To Kill a Tiger, and 20 Days in Mariupol.
And honestly, I feel like that happens quite a bit when there's a movie that's eligible in multiple categories where they just sort of like shove it into one and
Mhm.
then the other one is more like, well, let's look at in other places. The last movie that I think actually managed to get in both was Flea, maybe. And
I think you're right.
that actually got three nominations, I think.
Yeah. Animated,
Um
documentary, and foreign
yeah,
or
and it should have won
international.
all three. It should have won all three.
It should
Uh,
have.
apart from that, but it's not that uncommon, I think. And yeah, it was probably a really competitive category. I did expect Mariupol to make it in foreign film as well, but I'm not shocked that, especially if it's actually going to win documentary, like I think it might.
Yeah, I think it's going
Um,
to.
yeah, yeah,
I think the one question, and I can't remember if it got disqualified because of the Emmys, but still the Michael J. Fox documentary, I think that was one people had their eye on.
unclear, but I don't think it was ineligible. I think it would have been ineligible with the older sort of like voting deadlines
Hmm.
had they been in place of the Emmys without the writer strike. But I think it turned into like a situation where things were a little too rushed and crammed together in terms of timeline to make a I think a like a decision about
Yeah,
it. So I just think it didn't get enough votes, and that's what happened. Yeah.
yeah, and I think it's interesting that there's. I feel like there's been a trend recently of there kind of being like a pop culture figure or pop culture documentary that gets
Yeah.
in. Um, and there isn't in this lineup. And
Yeah.
there was a big one that I think people were also wondering about, American Symphony, um,
Very weird.
that did not get in. It got in for song, but
Which, yeah, was also the other expected one. So yeah, it's weird that it didn't hit this one
yeah.
somehow.
Which
Yeah.
have you seen it?
No, I listened to the song though.
The song's I think good.
Yeah.
The movie itself is like well done, but it just feels very, in my opinion, there's it's it's unchallenging of
Mm,
him.
hmm
It's just like he loves music and he's very good at it, and
hmm
it's stressful sometimes. Like that's basically the entire documentary. You don't really learn too much about him beyond that.
That's what I heard. Yeah,
Like he's an amazing musician and
sure.
has great music and stuff, but there isn't enough there to, I think. So I'm not upset like it got snubbed because I think there just wasn't
Yeah.
enough there to make a really compelling, memorable documentary.
Yeah, had I known it was just more like a geography kind of situation of like, look how amazing he is, then I would have probably,
Yeah,
I would have probably thought about it twice. Yeah.
yeah. It was kind of like being a genius is overwhelming sometimes,
Yeah,
and
it's hard to be me. Yeah. So yeah.
so which can only take you so far, I think.
Hmm. Hmm.
But anyway, yeah, I think 20 Days in Mariupol is um, the front runner here.
I could see it like on stage already, like with the producers holding the Oscars and giving like a really
Yeah,
great speech. It's just you can, yeah, yeah.
yeah. We're gonna skip over animated short, documentary short, live action short. Good for them. Great gowns, beautiful
Well done, you
gowns.
guys.
We love you all. You all
Yes,
deserve
yes,
whichever one in your category has the longest name is gonna win.
yes.
That's always my the
If you
way I
don't know
predict
who
those
to pick for
categories.
your, yeah, if you don't know who to pick, yeah, go with the
Let's
longest title.
go. Let's jump. We were talking about this a little bit before, but let's talk about original score now.
Mm.
So we have American Fiction, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer, and Poor Things.
So obviously Oppenheimer is going to win.
Yes,
I think this is a bizarre lineup.
it one of the more baffling categories, I have to say.
Yeah. I haven't seen American Fiction yet. So, I mean, I can't really make an
I'm sure it
executive
had
sort of like,
music in it. I don't
I'm
remember
sure there's
anything
music in
about
it,
it. Yeah.
but were people thinking that this could even remotely happen? No,
I
I don't think so.
I wouldn't even had it in my top 10 if I did a top 10 for this. Probably.
So I feel like, well, good for them. I think it shows that the movie is strong, kind of like across the board.
For sure.
Um, it is it is, I think, bizarre that this would happen at the expense of, like, for example, like Boy and the Heron.
Mhm.
But it's one of those situations, I think, where clearly it's a movie that made it in because it got a lot of number one, maybe not on as many ballots, but a lot of number one placements. So a group of people felt really strongly about it, and that's how it happened.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we have John Williams breaking his own record, I believe, for uh, age. It's like 91 now,
Yeah. Yeah.
92, and
Up there. Yeah.
I'm sure there's original music in this movie.
I
Um,
could not tell you. And I saw
I
it twice.
yeah, I saw it, and it sounded like music.
I'm
Um,
like, oh, the old theme that we all love and cherish.
right.
Cool.
Um, it feels a little bit like his Star Wars nomination,
Yeah.
where it was like a pastiche of. This is the second time I've said the word pastiche. Good for me. Uh, like of the old themes, kind of weaved in with kind of like anonymous new music.
Which, I mean, I don't blame him. That's what I would be doing
Right. That's
at
all people want.
92. At 92, getting up in the morning to make like just write a score for your movie. That's what you're getting.
Yeah.
That's what you're getting.
Right.
And good for him. I predicted it to happen because I knew it was going to happen, and then it actually did happen. So it's as simple as
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Um, yeah. Oppenheimer again is taking this, I think,
Oh
pretty
yeah.
handily.
Yeah.
Killers and Poor Things aren't bad nominees. I
No.
think they both had good scores. Um, but yeah, Ludwig is way out in front, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is probably one of the easiest calls of the night.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
Um, moving on to sound, we have The Creator, we have Maestro, we have Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, Oppenheimer, and The Zone of Interest.
So I have opinions about this
Oh, I
category.
do too.
Yeah, because I think that Oppenheimer is winning this.
I think it is too.
But it really should be Zone of
It
Interest.
absolutely should be Zone of
Yeah.
Interest.
And I'm actually really, really happy that it made the cut because the sound of that movie is not as flashy as you would get in, like, yeah, any of the other nominees. It's not an action movie, essentially.
Hmm.
But the sound is so important to tell the story that this movie is telling with that specific setting,
Hmm.
and how it's sort of like the juxtaposition between sort of like what's in front of the camera and what's in the back, and what you hear and what you see and what you don't see. I can't think of a movie that makes use of sound that is like so crucial to the diegetic sort of purpose
Yeah,
of the whole thing.
it's the
Yeah.
best sound design I've encountered in years. I think
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
and
Just
it's
chilling.
it's chilling. It's impeccable, um, and it's going to lose to something that had more sound, basically. Like
Yeah.
because so many of these tech categories they love to reward the most. Um, so because it is for a lot of it a quiet movie, but
Yeah.
there's constant stories being told in the sound in every scene. Um, it should if it won, I would do a backflip and break
Yeah.
my neck. I'd be so
I
happy.
I mean, I'm gonna sit on it a little bit before I actually decide, but I feel like it's one of those scenarios where there's a movie that is so far ahead of the others in terms of what it was able to achieve for that specific category, where I feel like the Oscars will see that.
Hmm.
They'll be able to pick up on it, and somehow it actually does win just because it deserves it so overwhelmingly much.
It so
It's not
does.
always the case, but sometimes it happens, and sometimes you get Parasite sweeping, the big categories because it's
Right.
just so much better. It is just so much better. It is the correct choice.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
Um, did Parasite win production design?
I am not sure.
Uh,
I think it won four or five. I
it
think it
won.
won film director, it won screenplay, it won foreign film, and what else?
it, it won. It did. It won. Uh, let's see. It won. Yeah, it won screenplay, director, picture, and international film. It was nominated for editing and production design. It should have won
Yeah,
production design.
sure won both. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, God, I want the Zone of Interest to win. I usually never care about this
Yeah.
category, but this is one year I am deeply invested.
It's just really, really outstanding. Just really, really outstanding. So yeah, what
Yeah.
can you say? Yeah. Yeah.
All right, costume design. We have Barbie, Killers of the Flower Moon, Napoleon, Oppenheimer, Poor Things.
Yeah. I don't know. Barbie, I think everybody was agreeing on, it is in with a chance to actually win it all.
Mhm.
Probably same with Poor Things. Napoleon, I get it. They like a good period piece.
Yeah.
I don't know. How do you feel about it?
Uh, to me, it feels like again another Barbie versus Poor Things.
Yeah.
The one thing that could keep Barbie from winning is just the amount of costumes that are um,
Lifted or borrowed
right,
from, yeah.
exactly. But I get, I still think it's probably the front runner. Poor Things, I would put in number two,
Mm-hmm.
just because of the shoulder pad action.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I guess Killers might be third because there
Yeah.
are some really kind of intricate, beautiful costumes in that.
Yeah.
In that, and Napoleon is just
The hat.
the hat, right? And Oppenheimer is like a very solidly done period piece. So
Lots of suits.
lots of suits. We love a 1940s suit.
Yeah, I feel like Barbie makes sense as a winner here because I think in general when you think about Barbie, you think about fashion, but not even just fashion. You think about like Barbie's own brand of fashion, which I think the movie did capture
Yeah,
well. And yes, of course, they poached a lot from like existing like designs and like um different styles over across different decades, but they did a really, really good job.
mm.
So yeah, yeah.
You're right. So if they do get three, this would be the third.
So
Um,
that would be the third one that I think it might actually
yeah,
get.
uh,
Yeah.
great gowns, literally great gowns, beautiful
Great
gowns.
gowns. Beautiful
I say that
gowns.
all the
Yeah.
time, but this is
It applies.
it applies. Um, Speaking of great songs, beautiful songs,
Mm,
original song, we have our Queen Diane Warren nominated for The Fire Inside from Flaming Hot. There's
mhm.
I'm Just Ken from Barbie. It Never Went Away from American Symphony. I'm not going to say this correctly. Watazi, a song for my people from Killers of
Mhm.
the Flower Moon. And What Was I Made For from Barbie.
Yeah, so I think we both predicted Diane because you never should predict
You can
against
never count
Diane.
Diane out.
Yeah, no. So, you know, be that a lesson to, anybody who was like doubting, no, she's always in. Then she doesn't win, but
Yeah,
there's a reason why she's got like 15 nominations.
yeah.
She's always in. I have not listened to the song. The title to me makes it sound like it's a song about like stomach cramps. I don't know. I don't. Also because it is about like Cheetos. Is it like
I
I don't know.
mean, only Diane Warren could get an Oscar nomination for a movie about Cheetos. Let's be
Literally,
real.
literally. Not even Adele. Like, yeah,
Not even
honestly.
Adele could.
I feel like we need to resolve sort of like this category needs to be resolved at some point where like she just wins.
Yeah,
Which I don't even think is gonna stop her from getting nominated again, but at least you no longer have the sense of like she's gonna get nominated for literally everything.
yeah,
There might just be a break there, and then she makes, she's involved in a really, really good movie, and she actually writes a strong song for it, and then yeah, we can talk about it.
yeah.
But I mean, at this point, it's just sort of like people see her name, they know she hasn't won, and it's just an automatic like check.
Right.
That's how it is. Yeah.
Like the movie that she got nominated for last year wasn't even real. Like it had zero
No,
reviews on Rotten Tomatoes.
I feel like she's done like I think like one third of our nominations are like for movies that don't really exist.
Yeah, they may not.
Like,
They may not. No one's fact checked to see if they're actually real. Um,
and I mean, she's been close, I think, twice recently, where I'm like, I get it. I get why she keeps like getting like, brought in again and over and over and over. But it's just, yeah, is this a song about like diarrhea? I don't know.
yeah, I
I
don't
don't know.
know. Though I do say I think she's in her best position in a while. I mean, what was I made for is pretty far out front,
I think so.
especially if it wins at the Grammys.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say she's probably at least number three, possibly number two. Um,
I would say number three probably. Because Ken did win Critics' Choice, I
that is
think,
true. Yeah,
which was I think unexpected. I don't think that the song from Killers realistically has a shot. Although I think it would be one of those wins where people are like, we did a good thing here. Like we're
right.
gonna pat ourselves in the back and just yeah. Um and I don't even what's the fifth nominee? I don't even
It
remember.
never went away from American Symphony.
Yeah, and I mean the movie did go away because
Yeah.
it didn't yeah. So I don't
Yeah,
know. Yeah.
I'd be more willing to entertain a John Batiste upset here if it had been nominated in
Yeah.
documentary, but the fact it wasn't even nominated there.
It is a fine song, but
Yeah, like I'm not
it's
mad about
bizarre,
it at
yeah.
all. That's
Yeah.
but yeah, it's probably in fifth.
Yeah. And I feel like Diane is just it's just like she's always like third, probably.
Yeah, that's kind of her lot.
She was second, I think, the year of If It Happens to You. She was second the year of EOC because she did get the Globe for that.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, that was also a year where like probably one of the greatest movie songs of all time went home with nothing. So it's
Yeah.
just there's always going to be like a story that gets in the way.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Her path to victory now I think is contingent on um the amount of like the intensity of her Susan Lucci-ness
yeah.
versus the weakness of the category. So this is a strong category this year.
The
Um, eh,
the path that I see is she gets a contract to write a song for a really high profile movie, and she gets paired up with someone like Billie Eilish, for example,
yeah, someone
right?
more current and
Yeah. And then I think it becomes a joint effort, but then there's a little more cred behind it. As in, it's not the Cheetos movie. It is
yeah,
like, I don't know, Oppenheimer, something like
right.
that.
It's not
And
like
then, and yeah, and then we can talk about it. But yeah, those are not the movies that are getting thrown at her.
no, she's going to come back and she's going to get nominated for a movie about loofahs or a movie about Candy Crush, um, and just
Yeah.
continue to lose.
Which I mean, I would take 15 losing nominations over zero.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, that's an entire wall in your house with that certificate that says I've been nominated for an Oscar 15 times over.
Has she
There's no shame in that.
has she where Edith Head is the most nominated woman of all time, right?
I think by far. Yeah.
Um
But like she's in
yeah,
in like 35 nominations, something like stupid like that.
yeah, so she's a long way from
Yeah.
that, but she's got to be at least number two or three in terms of most
She's for
nominated
sure in the top
female.
five of like
Yeah.
most nominated, like yeah. In terms of like the craft, yeah, there's a distinction to be made, I think, with like acting, it's a little different because I think like people tend to, for example, like lump in all of Bradley Cooper's nominations together. And I'm
Mhm.
like, that's a little you shouldn't do that. But
Right.
yeah, yeah. For her, yeah.
Yeah, Edith Head has 35 nominations.
30,
So
did I say 35?
I think you did. I think you got it
Oh
exactly
my
right.
God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh yeah,
All right.
I know my gay stuff. Yeah.
All right, Diane, we love you. I don't
We
know
love
what's
you,
happening
Diane.
this year.
Yeah.
You got to just conjure up that fire inside of you, Diane, and write another song for next year.
Yeah, which she will, and she'll be in, and we'll talk about
We'll
this
have the
again next
exact same
year.
conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's move on to cinematography. Nominees are El Conde, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, Oppenheimer, and Poor Things.
I'm bummed that Anatomy didn't get this one.
Anatomy had such
Um,
great.
I
Um,
predicted it to get in, and I was actually fairly sure that it would. But I think by large, these are the five that most people would have agreed on.
yeah, Zone. I also really love the cinematography in Zone.
Yes, which it
Um,
should win, I think. It's not going to win, but it should win. Yeah.
well, it's not nominated.
Oh, it's not nominated. Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
Yeah,
but it should have won.
but I am very excited. El Conde has really great cinematography. I was
Yeah.
really happy with that being included. Everything else, fine. Um, Maestro basically has that one or like two scenes, like the concert and then the Snoopy thing, which I think, other than that, not not a movie I remember the cinematography much for. Poor
Yeah, no.
Poor Things has, I think, pretty good cinematography. It does overuse, I think, some of the fisheye stuff that Yorgos loves.
He loves that shit. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Killers, uh, yeah, it's well shot. I don't think of it as in terms of I don't think of it as like a cinematographer's movie.
I don't even know why I thought that Zone was in, but it really should be. I'm thinking of like the infrared stuff now.
Yes,
Why would that miss here? That's such a shame.
but just
Yeah.
the and the editing too, like the
Yeah.
the way it would change angles seamlessly as they're like walking through the house
Hmm.
or walking through the yard, and just the where everyone was positioned and how just the framing of things is so important and how well
Thank
framed
you.
everything is.
Thank you. Tell me, like, name another movie where what's almost in the frame is as important as it is in this movie,
Right,
where you're so aware that something is just outside the frame,
right.
but
It's
it's there.
it's incredible work, and
Yeah.
it should be here.
Yeah, that would be my write-in winner. So
Yeah,
they
but I
can
feel
fix
like,
it.
but I feel like this is another Oppenheimer win here.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so we can move on to let's move on to the juicy ones.
Mm.
Let's get into screenplays. Let's do adapted, or actually no, let's do original first. Anatomy of a Fall, The Holdovers, Maestro, May December, Past Lives.
Um, so I if you had told me May December gets one nomination for how things ended up, like sort of like the way that the thing shook out, I would have said it's probably here. But I'm still surprised that it got it. Just because like the movie really just imploded
Yeah,
towards the end, where we
it truly
realized
did.
we liked it, but nobody
It
else
it
did.
Hindenburged
Like
pretty
critics
bad.
did, but yeah, yeah, yeah. Crash and burn, like really, really. And I think that yeah, if it was bound to get one nomination, then it was gonna be this one. I don't know what's the resistance in terms of like the Academy and Todd Haynes. I don't know where the pushback comes from in terms of like why he is so consistently under rewarded.
Hmm.
And I mean, he's been like hit and miss with me. I'll be very, very open about that. I'm not the biggest like Carol fan, for example. But he's made like Safe, for example, is one of my absolute favorite movies.
Hmm.
Stuff like that. Yeah. So it's bizarre to me that there's sort of like pushback to kind of like really just embrace him.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
if I had to guess, I think it's because his movies, even though they um, are can be tonally pretty different, I think they all are challenging in a way that's they're they tend to be slightly beyond expectation. They
Hmm.
dance outside of expectation in terms of
Hmm.
like tone, in terms
Hmm.
of point of view. So I think it makes it harder for more traditional minded viewers to like embrace it, if that makes sense.
It
Like
does. I
like
sorry, go ahead.
I was like with May December. I think it's like it because the tone was so unique and there was intentional discord in terms of like the music and the style and the
Yeah.
cinema, like I think it um I think it put some people off, like they just weren't sure how to process it.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to put it like this, but like I just feel like it really flew over people's heads in a
Yeah, that's what
way.
I'm trying to say.
Like a lot of people just didn't get what it was like doing, what it was trying to do. I don't know. I want to live in a world where this has nothing to do with him being gay.
Mm.
But I also would say that he's just not someone that you'll see out there campaigning for this stuff.
Yeah,
Like you'll see the cast, but he's just not out there just playing the game the way that other people are playing the game.
right.
And I think for whatever reason, you kind of got to respect that. That's just how it is for him.
Hmm.
It's just, I think, a combination of he's not, I think, mainstream enough. He's not straight, and he's not out there like talking about it and just, selling it
Yeah,
because he probably doesn't want or need to.
yeah,
So,
I think you summed it up. Yeah, like there's an approachableness that's missing from him particularly,
yeah.
and that I think that gets transferred to his movies sometimes and people's perceptions. Like his movies aren't tidy and neat and like
No.
easily
Yeah.
digestible. Even Carol, which I think is one of his more straightforward ones, still has like a um, a kind of a subversiveness that I think people had trouble with. But yeah, I
I
think you
mean,
nailed it.
it's just I don't know that even like most people know what he actually looks like.
Yeah,
Like if you
it's
if you
true.
like if you went up to like 10 like Academy members and you were like, could you just describe Tadane's face to me? They'd be like, he's got glasses, right? Like yeah, he's just not really that visible. And I think that does
Yeah,
factor in this kind of stuff. Maybe not with critics. Critics know what he looks
yeah,
like. But like, yeah, your average Academy voter, he's like, I don't really know this guy. He's not at the parties. I never talked to him at, I don't know, the Vanity Fair, like whatever party. It's just he just not do that.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I was 4 for 5 in this category. I had
Mm.
Saltburn instead of May December because I thought they would double down on the
Hmm.
Emerald Fennell, like to be like, hey, we like we meant to give her an Oscar. We went with that intentionally. It wasn't an
Yeah, no,
accident.
Saltburn was, yeah, it got burned. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Mm.
did.
Yeah.
But I think as far as winners go, I think Anatomy is probably up front with the
Yeah.
Holdovers close behind.
It's one of those two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say I can think of and I know people think I'm crazy. Eric thinks I'm crazy, but I think if people want to give Bradley Cooper an Oscar, there could be a surprise in this category for Maestro, even though it's a terrible screenplay. It's the worst part of the
Yeah.
movie. Um, if that is one scenario, I'd give it like a 3% chance, but it is a possibility. I think Anatomy, though, based on the strength of its nominations, the fact that it won the Globes and has continued to outperform
Mhm.
expectation, I think is positioned to win.
If they really need to give him one, then I hope it's here,
Hmm.
honestly. Although then we'd be living in a reality where this beat Anatomy of a Fall.
Yeah, which would be one of the
Would be
most
hard
insane things.
hard to swallow.
Yeah, that'd be one of the most insane, lopsided. um, that would be How Green Is My Valley beating Citizen Kane.
But I think it makes sense that this would go to Anatomy because it's probably going to be the only thing it
I think you're right.
wins. I
Yeah,
want to say probably because I'm still like, I think Sandra's winning BAFTA, and we'll have a conversation about that if and when that happens. But
yeah,
as of today, I think it might just realistically win this one, and that's it. And it feels like a movie that wins like screenplay, and that's it.
yeah. And the screenplay is just incredible and phenomenal. So it absolutely just on
Yeah.
the strength of that alone, regardless if it's other nominations, should win. And I think honestly, holdovers, I would be more willing to entertain winning because I know it's strong. But I think this is a small but important detail. It's not written by Alexander Payne.
It is not.
It's
Yeah.
David Hemmingson. So I feel like it would have a better chance if it was written by Alexander Payne just because of his being a name. You know,
Um, do the names appear on the ballot, or did you just get the title of the movie?
that's a great question. I don't know.
Because
Um,
I've seen a picture of an Oscar ballot, and I don't remember right now whether he did or not.
yeah.
But I think that might actually, if it actually does not bear the name of the writers, that it might actually play in its advantage. You know,
Yeah.
because people are gonna be like, "Oh, Alexander Payne, I can vote for him here," and
Yeah.
then whoops,
Oh, he didn't get
actually
in for,
no,
yeah.
yeah.
He didn't get in for director. I feel bad. I'll vote for him here. Wait. Whoops.
Oh wait, yeah. So, but yeah, it's between those two, and I think it should be between those two for what we
Yeah.
got. Yeah.
Um, cool. Let's move on to adapted. We have American Fiction, Barbie, Oppenheimer, Poor Things, and The Zone of Interest.
Um. So, I Barbie getting pushed here so late in the game kind of ruined my life, even though I agree that it is adapted insofar as what the rules state.
Mm-hmm.
Then whether I agree with the rules or not, that's a completely different conversation. But I mean, it is based on existing fictional characters, and according to the Academy, that is adapted. It just falls under the umbrella of adapted screenplays.
Right.
Um, it ended up knocking out probably a couple of movies that really, really deserved it. And I don't even know if it actually can win, which feels kind of like a waste in a way. But this is Greta's nomination, so at least there's that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it could win here just because Greta has yet to win.
Hmm.
Um, plus, there's that push of like, oh, she didn't get nominated for director.
Hmm.
But I feel like Oppenheimer will win here. I feel like it'll be
I'm
the boring
yeah,
choice.
I would agree. I would agree. Just looking at go over the nominees again. I'm just
American
yeah,
Fiction,
yeah.
Barbie, Oppenheimer, Poor Things, and Zone of Interest.
Yeah, so I would say probably Oppenheimer, if not Barbie, if not American Fiction. But I'd be shocked, honestly, if
Yeah.
Oppenheimer misses. Yeah. Yeah.
So, though I really loved the Zone of Interest
Hmm.
screenplay,
Hmm.
Poor Things
Yeah.
was a little bit too long and not quite as focused as Zone or I think American Fiction. So, I'd put it last probably in this lineup for me.
There's I think also something to be said about the fact that a lot of people feel like the kind of feminist message behind it did not come across the way they meant it to,
Yeah.
and that this is essentially a woman with the brain of a child fucking her way through Europe, which for a lot of people is just problematic.
Yeah.
Um, I yeah, clearly it got nominated, so it has its fans. Clearly, people support it. I think Oppenheimer is just a more straightforward movie to sort of like award here.
Yeah. I think so too.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a tight category.
It is a tight category, yeah.
All right, let's move on to the acting categories.
All
We're gonna start
right.
with we're gonna start supporting actor because that's the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
last and least.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we have Sterling K. Brown, American Fiction, Robert De Niro, Killers of the Flower Moon, Robert Downey Jr., Oppenheimer, Ryan Gosling, Barbie, and Mark Ruffalo, Poor Things.
We could have started with this category like at the beginning of the pod because I think actually visual effects is a lot more exciting than this. Honestly.
You're right. You're right.
We were saying last and least. Actually,
Actually,
yeah. Weird mishmash of names that were pretty much in everybody's like top 10.
yeah,
I would say once we started realizing that Melton was like free falling, I think people went back to the drawing board and they were like scrambling to rearrange things around. And to me, this lineup looks exactly like what ended up happening by having to like, move people in and out of it at the last minute.
Yeah. And this is four of the five from SAG, right? Because Defoe's in at SAG instead of Ruffalo. Is that right?
Yes, Defoe got in at SAG.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Defoe's the one name I think that's the big miss here, but someone had to miss, and I think everyone agreed the Poor Things guys and or Sterling K. Brown were kind of the on the bubble.
Yeah, I don't think I did not think Brown would get it. But good for him. In 2024, I think just mentally done with straight people playing gay characters.
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do with his performance. I haven't seen the movie yet. It's got nothing to do with him. He is a splendid, amazing, wonderful looking man. Very, very gifted actor from what I've seen. I just cannot be bothered anymore.
Yeah.
I just can't be. Yeah.
He's not bad in it. He's always good, but
Hmm.
his character's kind of detestable.
Hmm.
Kind of unnecessarily, I thought.
Hmm.
Um, and compared to what even like Defoe or Melton did, I didn't think I wouldn't if I had just seen the movie in a vacuum and not known about its Oscar
Yeah.
um, uh, possibility, I probably wouldn't have even thought of him being a
Yeah.
possibility.
Which from the trailer, that's how it comes across, I would say. But again, you shouldn't really judge a movie from a trailer. But yeah, I mean, I did not really expect sort of like the late surge that he had to turn into a nomination, but I think Melton just completely falling off the face of the planet kind of opened it up for
Yeah.
yeah. And honestly, I'm surprised that Sessa didn't manage to get in. I think that's who I was predicting to kind of like
Mhm.
nab that fit slot here. Um, it is I think, one of those scenarios where you just get a really young performer. It's his first movie. He gets in for like a lot of different like breakthrough young performer
Mhm.
kind of awards or recognition, and then there's no real traction in the actual acting category to make that happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was young actor bias combined with
Yeah.
it being his first role. It's going to be
Yeah.
fascinating though if Giamatti and Randolph both win and he's not
Yeah.
nominated. That'll be
Yeah.
really odd.
Which is
But
which is what probably what we're looking at.
which is might be what we're looking at. I mean, I'm not mad at them winning. They're both fantastic.
Oh yeah.
But with
Yeah.
that without Sessa nominated is pretty remarkable.
And I did look at the Screen Time Central, and I think we're really looking at a co-lead situation because yeah, Jamadi has more screen time, but it's just a smidge more.
Yeah.
Um, I wonder if that actually played a role into it or not, as in he got maybe mentions in both actor and supporting
Oh,
actor.
that's possible.
And because I mean, I think that's how sort of like vote splitting actually, if it does happen, that's kind of how it happens. It doesn't really happen between like people necessarily. It happens
Yeah.
between like categories. Um, and and I mean, voters can vote for him wherever they want.
Right.
And it's, I think, not unthinkable that he would get, mentions in both, but then they don't add up, so he doesn't get enough in either.
Right. Yeah, it definitely could happen based on because it is really a co-lead situation.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but anyway, great job supporting actor Robert Downey Jr. Congratulations on your Oscar.
He knows what
Oh,
it's,
he knows.
he knows why he's winning. Yeah.
He's practicing his smart alecky comments when he grabs his statue. Like he's already
Yeah.
he knows. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go to supporting actress.
Mm.
All right, we got Emily Blunt in Oppenheimer. We got Danielle Brooks in The Color Purple. America Ferrera in Barbie. Jodie Foster, Naiad, and Davine Joy Randolph in The Holdovers.
So I think of like the first big lesson that I got in film school, when I was like taking like screenplay classes, was you really should not write a monologue that's longer than half a page.
Hmm.
because it really weighs the entire script down. So I think it's fascinating that we have now someone getting an Oscar nomination literally just based on being given a really long monologue that she honestly just recites
With hand gestures.
with the kind of very theatrical sort of and gesturing towards the crowd.
Right.
Yeah, because that's what that performance ends up like. That's what it boils down to. And I understand a lot of people left the theater thinking about that monologue, but okay.
It's it's that monologue is if you ordered Laura Dern from Marriage Story off of Shein, or off of Timu. Like it's the
That
not the knockoff version. Like I am a big. I think Laura Dern's Oscar win is outrageous. I love
yeah,
Laura Dern.
yeah,
She has one monologue in that movie,
yeah.
but compared to America Ferrera and Barbie, Laura Dern is Shakespearean. Um,
The to me that monologue in Barbie feels like if there was a microphone in the guest chamber with Susan Hayward and I Want to Live, and they just let her talk for 10 minutes before they open like the valve and the guest goes
yeah.
in.
And
I
I think
was yeah,
that I think is one of the big headlines from the Oscar nominations overall is that America Ferrera got in, but Margot Robbie did not, which
yeah,
ironically solved your problem of Ryan Gosling being the only acting nomination
right.
from Barbie.
They can even
Um,
say that. Yeah, they because he's not.
yeah.
So yeah.
Um, and I was thinking about like, how did this happen? And I feel like my theory is that Davine Joy Randolph took so many of the number one votes
You are correct.
that the amount of number one votes that everyone else needed was so low that America Ferrera just had a couple from a few like RBG tote bag Academy members that she was able to get in.
In hindsight, we should have predicted it because so that's not a theory. That is exactly what happened.
Hmm.
If Divine Joe Randolph got the Divine Joe Randolph gets like 100 like percent of like number one votes, then you start looking at who's slightly lower on the ballot on a couple like straight ballots, and everybody and their sister worked on Barbie, who probably get to vote on this,
Right.
and they would put Ferrara
Yeah.
right like after Randolph in that lineup. And
So
that's how it
she,
happened.
I think she had a very small but very mighty fan base that just because of the numbers allowed
Yep.
her to get in. But the fact that, and I'll just say the fact that she's in here, and even Jodie Foster, who I like, and Nayad, and she was decent, she was good. The fact that they're in here, but Sandra Hüller is not for the zone of interest is
Yeah, woof.
outrageous to me.
Yeah.
Sandra is so great in that movie.
I like Jodie just fine in Nayad. I feel like half of her role in Nayad is just her holding Annette's head and going, "You're Diana Nayad." Like that's
That is
that's
her
it.
entire performance.
That's pretty much, except for when she's like on the boat looking concerned. That is pretty much the character
Yeah.
in the movie. And does that need an Oscar nomination?
No.
Clearly, people thought it did.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah,
Um, like Brooks and Blunt, I think we everyone was predicting. Uh,
yeah. Against my better judgment, but I ended up being right. I wasn't 100% on Brooks. Honestly, I was not.
yeah, but also another thing that needs to be studied along with Charles Melton's nosedive is the rollout of the color purple and how just absolutely botched it was.
Which honestly, we never really bought into the fantasy. Like can't like we never did. We never did.
I Yeah, no, we never did, and like I feel like we were very early on being like, there's something really off about this trailer. Like it's weird that it's embargoed, but other people in the predicting game were like, it's gonna get 8 nominations, 10 nominations, like they were
Oh yeah.
really they believed in it, and I yeah we called that one right. I just gotta say, we called it. We were right.
We called it. I mean, I just tend to go with like because it's a movie that I still haven't seen. It was very hard to get around to. Even like in like a month ago, like in
Mhm.
like December, it was still hard to find. Um, then you end up going with like what you read, which is like nothing because there's no reviews out for it. People abroad are saying that it's not good, and
The source
uh
material, the musical itself, was not well reviewed.
the trailer looks like a gay man's methamphetamine nightmare, and it's yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So the fact that it ended up with exactly one nomination, not even any text, is
Yeah.
pretty remarkable. And I just feel like
Yeah.
even I feel like the exact and again, not having seen it, I feel like the exact same movie could have been released in a much better way and at least gotten a couple more nominations. Like they just botched the rollout of it so badly, and the story so quickly became about the shitty working conditions for the
Yeah.
actresses
Yeah.
versus anything about the movie or its legacy or the original story. You know, like it just everything about it went wrong.
This movie, let it be a lesson. This movie should have come out in October.
Yes.
They should have done enough damage control before that to get the cast on board to actually promote it. It is not a Christmas movie, so there was no reason for it to come out literally on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
Um, and it should not have been embargoed. And you should have actually used your cast in terms of like sending them out to kind of like campaign for the movie to talk about the middling reception for it and what it meant and that they didn't agree with it and what it was like to actually work on this film, the meaning and all of that. And that's how you build up some kind of momentum for it. But they just hid it. It just remained hidden for the whole year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then what do you think is going to
Bafflingly
happen?
so.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like not there's been plenty of movies that have been big Oscar movies that have gotten like lukewarm, like 70% on Rotten Tomatoes type reviews, like and still gone on to getting a decent number of Oscar nominations, like Bohemian Rhapsody.
Or 60% or 50%.
Right, yeah. So it's like if that's what they were afraid of, they that could have easily been managed, I think, or much more effectively managed.
I don't think they knew exactly how to handle what happened with all the screenings that we're doing that were not going well, and
Yeah,
it just I think it snowballed into a thing that was just too huge to handle.
right. And it became like never let them see you sweat. Like
Yeah.
we saw them sweat
Oh
trying to
yeah.
figure this out, and that
We
was
were
never a
mopping
good
the
sign.
floor.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, but yeah. Uh, back to the category. Davine is winning this. Should win this.
Easy, yeah.
Yeah. Um, I'm looking forward to that moment because
Yeah.
she's great. And
I will say one thing. I hope she maybe foregoes or notes and she just speaks from the heart.
yeah,
Her acceptance speeches, I think, so far have been a little too maybe like PR managed.
yeah,
I just really want her to get her moment on stage and just tell us about what this means to her.
yeah.
Yeah,
Speak from the heart for sure.
yeah, yeah.
Because she's got it. Like
Oh,
the, I don't think
it's
she needs to
there.
do any PR management. Like I don't think she
No,
needs to. If you win a Golden Globe and you're like in a very tight race, I get why you choose to do like a very PR managed type speech.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, but when you're so far ahead, you can just be yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Um,
done.
it's
So
done,
like Davon, if you're watching this,
which she is.
you
Hi.
won. You won. Start writing your speech now because I just kind of want to sit there and just cry
Yeah,
when she's actually, grabbing that statue. Yeah.
same. All right, let's go on to actor. We have Bradley Cooper in Maestro, Coleman Domingo in Rustin, Paul Giamatti in The Holdovers, Cillian Murphy in Oppenheimer, and Jeffrey Wright in American Fiction.
All the juju that we've been sort of like putting out in terms of like this category and what we feared could happen, I think you just end up landing in like Giamatti's lap.
I think so. And I my when we first said, I think Giamatti could win this. We got some pushback,
Mm-hmm.
and that was called silly,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not silly, and
Mm.
it's very likely to happen, I think.
Who's silly now?
Yeah.
Not Giamatti.
Because the movie
Uh,
itself is really strong.
yeah.
There is passion behind his performance that I see that I don't see for Murphy. People respect Murphy's performance, and he, for all things I can tell, does a great job. But it's not. I don't see people falling over themselves gushing about it.
So Murphy's issue is just how strong the movie is everywhere else.
Right.
That's literally it. Because it's a movie that's going to win picture. It's a movie that's going to win director. It's a movie that's going to win crap ton of tech Oscars. Um, I don't think that his performance is maybe considered to be at the same level as where the movie is in these categories where he's for sure winning. And he's got competition. He's got huge competition, as in a veteran actor, arguably the role and performance of his life in a movie that's just as well liked,
Hmm.
a much more relatable, I think, performance. And he is not American,
Right.
and Giamatti is.
Hmm.
So, because I think that does factor at times into how these play out, Marissa Tomei. So, yeah, yeah,
It's true.
yeah,
Um, and I'm predicting him to win SAG.
yeah,
Um, I think he could win BAFTA too, but I do think Murphy will probably win BAFTA.
sure.
Um, but I think he's out front for Oscar. Just his past history with Oscar, his kind of beloved status in the industry, and just the overall strength of the film. It really had surged at the right time.
Um, I will say that I'd be maybe like 100% that Murphy was going to win BAFTA if he was British. There's still a bit of like an Irish curse, I think,
That
at
is true.
BAFTA, where you kind of have to negotiate. Yeah, so this is not, an American performer, but they're also not British.
Right.
And I think that does play into it a little bit. I would not be shocked if Murphy wins BAFTA. And as a matter of fact, I'm also predicting what you could, arguably say is an upset for actress at BAFTA. I don't really think that if that happens and Giamatti has won SAG, that wouldn't matter.
Hmm.
If Giamatti wins SAG, I think that's it.
Yeah, I think so too.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and deserved. It's not silly. It's deserved. Uh,
Yeah. He's saving us from
ugh, the
terrible,
curse of
terrible
this
things.
category.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about what we really want to talk about. Actress in a
Yes.
leading role.
Yes.
Annette Bening in Naiad, Lily Gladstone, Killers of the Flower Moon, Sandra Hüller, Anatomy of the Fall, Carey Mulligan, Maestro, and Emma Stone, Poor Things.
Um, I'm how did Mulligan get all those number ones?
Because she's a Chilean queen.
Is she?
She's the greatest actress to ever come from Chile. Uh,
Um, I mean, it's kind of like when Helen Mirren got nominated for that what was it called?
oh,
For
and yes, I know what you're talking about, and I can't think of it.
I can't think of the name of the movie. Where she plays the wife of what's it called?
I want to say like The Impossible, but that's I'm
No,
thinking.
that's Naomi Watts.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you can you imagine Helen Mirren in The Impossible? Oh my God.
All right, let me see.
The Last Station? What was it
The
called?
Last
Something like that.
Station. Yes, The
Is
Last
what was
Station.
that was okay. So it kind of reminds me of when Helen Mirren got nominated for The Last Station, where we were like, where did she get these number one votes? But
Right.
then sometimes it just happens. And so it's not the greatest nomination. I do think she is better than him in the movie. That does not mean that she deserved to be nominated.
Hmm.
I I feel like we lost a couple performances here to make room for names.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Um, and like Annette Bening for Naiad, uh, she was on the bubble for sure.
I
Um, but
predicted her.
but
In the end, I did.
yeah, you were right. I did not. I took her out at the last minute and had Robbie in. I'm not upset by that nomination. I mean, and that's always great. Um, but
I, on principle, as a homosexual, I cannot be mad that Annette Bening is getting nominated for an Oscar.
yeah,
I
you can't
just
be mad about
question,
it.
no, I just question sort of like people sitting in front of this movie and then getting to the end where she comes out of the water and she looks like Walter Mercado and being like, this is a great performance. This deserves an Oscar.
Never give up. Follow your dream, or whatever she says at the end. Um,
But
yeah,
clearly enough people did. It
yeah,
is Annette Bening. We love her.
yeah,
I can live with this.
yeah.
But Carrie Mulligan though, Carrie Mulligan does sting a little
She's
bit.
she's the fifth. She's fifth for me in terms of preference out of this list for sure.
It
A distant fifth. Um,
yeah,
but also, I think Benny and
yeah.
Mulligan are two that are out of it. I think it's a three. I'm gonna say it's a. There's three possibilities for this category right now,
Essentially, yes.
um, and uh, right now I'd say most pundits would have Emma Stone having the edge right now, but I'm with you. I think Sandra Hüller could easily win BAFTA, um, just because of the one because of the popularity of that movie in Europe. It swept the European Film Awards. She's much more known over there,
Mhm,
and the more people are now seeing the movie.
mhm.
Now that it's gotten these nominations, it's back in theaters, and people are actually seeing it. And when you see her in the movie, it's
So that's kind of it for me. As in, this is exactly how I would put it. Because I'm watching like visual essays about the movie online, and they're just like people are reacting to it. I am not joking or exaggerating when everybody at some point will bring up the fact that Sandra Hüller in Enemy Fall is the best performance they've seen all year.
yeah,
Everybody says that, so it must mean something.
yeah,
It must mean something, and I mean, it will, I think, greatly enhance her chances if she actually does end up winning BAFTA, which I think is likely to happen. In Also out of a lineup where Gladstone was not even nominated.
right,
I feel kind of silly now because I've been like saying Gladstone's as big a lock as Randolph is, and clearly, as soon as I said that, I jinxed her. Um, and I think that there is there is a reality where Gladstone is not as strong as we thought, and Stone is a relatively recent winner.
hmm,
And people start looking at the person that won BAFTA, who's in a Best Picture, Best Director nominated film,
hmm,
and just decide, you know what? I actually liked her the best.
yeah. I think
And
that
let
could
me
definitely
just,
happen.
yeah, yeah,
Because Emma Stone's Achilles heel is that she's won recently and she's young.
yeah.
Um, I mean, I think she's getting career best reviews from a lot of places for Poor Things. Her British accent is better than it was in The Favorite. Um, but again, they may not want to be rushed to reward her again. Lily Gladstone, I think, has the best narrative in terms
Yeah.
of that part of the campaign.
Hmm.
But she's also, and this is my opinion, and I've said it from the beginning, like she is constantly let down by her own movie. She does an amazing job, but the movie itself is like what she accomplishes in spite of the movie is what I think is really the story for me for her. Um,
Yeah.
whereas Sandra Hüller and Emma Stone are both smack dab bullseye central of their center of their movies. They're they have way more screen time. They're the sole focus in a lot of ways. Gladstone is the heart of her movie, but she's off screen for large amounts of it. Um,
In bed for
it
the entire second half. And I think that's really what we were talking about the editing, we were talking about the pacing of this movie. That's really sort of like what hurts that performance is that did she really need to spend that much? Did we really need that much footage of her in bed suffering?
yeah, like
I don't know.
like the more I think about it, sorry to go on a tangent, but like the fact that her entire trip to Washington D.C. to meet the president, which was like a huge pivotal thing that happened,
Thank you.
is like a 45-second scene, but the
Thank you.
contract signing scene between Leo and Robert
Is a
De
week
Niro
long.
is a week long. Like that to me sums up the way the film just short shifts her character. Um,
That sums up what the movie was actually interested in.
yeah,
That
uh,
tells you exactly what the movie wanted to be about.
yeah,
And it's just a huge miss. And I mean, I think a lot of the sort of like the narrative also for or against her being in lead has been the fact that she is basically absent for the second half of the movie where she didn't need to be. You could have literally just shown him poisoning her the first time and cut to when they find her
right.
almost dead at the end of the movie, and none of what happens in between that adds anything of meaning to the character.
You're absolutely right.
There's one scene where they show DiCaprio also ingesting the poison, which I think, yeah, it makes sense to sort of like, let us into like the psychology of his character a little bit. But anything else that happens in the entire hour could have been just condensed into like this ellipsis of like she's been drugged and then we find her in bed and then actually work on what it means for her to realize that this has happened to her,
Yeah,
that the person that probably she trusted the most has done this to her. And all we get is she asks him a question at the end and he lies again and she just gets up and leaves. And
yeah,
it's just you cannot really resolve that way.
yeah.
You can't.
She really gets the short end of the stick, and I said like, if she wins, I'm very happy. I think
Me
it's a
too.
phenomenal performance. Um, and but her I think the lockedness of her winning was, yeah, in hindsight we all thought it was a lock, but I think the things like the screen time and the her character disappearing for large swaths of the film are starting to show in the fact that she wasn't nominated for BAFTA, um, and lost Critics' Choice. Like,
It is just such a huge miss. Like it's not even like she loses BAFTA to Hooler because we could intellectualize that, but she did not get nominated.
yeah. So
Yeah.
so she still definitely a very real possibility because I know Killers of the Flower Moon is going to have a different
Yeah.
uh, the Academy is going to have a different relationship with it than the BAFTA
Mhm.
has with it, but there's definitely space in her waning, and Emma Stone being an uncertain replacement for the front runner
Mhm.
definitely leaves room for Sandra Hüller to come in if she scores at BAFTA.
Can I ask you a very fair question? And then
Please.
you don't have to answer it right now. You can take it home and think about it. But what happens if Benning wins SAG?
um, if
Because
Benning wins SAG,
I've been thinking that it could happen.
you can
I've
never
been
count out the
thinking.
veterans at SAG. That's true.
I've been thinking that it could happen. She won SAG for American Beauty. It just is a really well respected veteran in a movie that people will see as something that was like physically demanding for, especially for someone, in her age bracket. Um, and I just have this nagging feeling that I just see her winning SAG. And then at that point, I do not know what to make of this if that happens, this whole
I mean, then the
category.
category is wide open. The one thing that keeps me from, it definitely could happen. You can never count out the veterans at SAG. I don't think Naiad has been a widely watched movie. I mean, it definitely will get more eyes on it now that she's nominated for Oscar.
Yeah.
Um,
It's on Netflix. I mean,
so it's definitely possible.
yeah.
If she were to win, she's not nominated for BAFTA, so that would still probably be a Hooler versus Stone situation.
Yeah.
But in that case, um, Gladstone, I think, would fall to fourth. Because then we would have Stone and Gladstone would have a Globe, Huller would have a BAFTA, Benny would have a SAG, and Stone would have the Critics' Choice. So Maestro would be, Carey Mulligan would be fifth.
I mean, because in the end, you kind of got to look like at SAG and BAFTA as the two precursors where actual Oscar voters are voting. Because yes, I mean, the Globes, great track record, Critics' Choice, just sucking up to the Oscars, whatever. But those people don't vote.
Yeah.
The vast majority of those people are not part of the Academy. SAG and BAFTA is where the crossover's at in terms of like you get an idea. And it's not that surprising then when you realize that BAFTA has broken a lot of ties in categories that were really, really close. And then BAFTA has been like, I think, a really solid predictor of also like a number of upsets. So clearly it's not gonna happen for her at BAFTA, but if she wins SAG, and I do think that is something that could happen, we're gonna need like an entire episode just about this category at some point. That's
because then the math gets incredible at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think in that instance, my first just looking at it, I think Gladstone moves down to fourth, and Benin is then up in second or third. Yeah, it's a possibility. As much as it's kind of a whirlwind to have Gladstone be seemingly so far out front and then kind of fall, is it has created a really fascinating category.
Because also my thinking, I think where I would just kind of wanted to land with this is that we would end up like we did in 2021 with 4 different people winning the 4 like televised awards.
Oh god, then
And
Chastain wins on write-in votes.
I'm thinking of the Nomadland year.
Oh, Nomadland year. No, yeah.
And I'm like, who ended up winning the Oscar? The one that won BAFTA.
Yeah. I think, again, Huller has only helped the more people see her film.
Right.
And the more awards she wins, the more people are going to see her film. So,
and it's not like she is this unknown foreign actress nominated this unknown movie and she's like the sole nominee from it. No, she is nominated for a movie that's top 5 in picture, that got the director in, that's probably going to win screenplay, that got below the line tech nominations. This movie is a serious hitter.
Yeah, for real.
It's a serious hitter. There's no denying that. So if we end up in a situation where there's 4 different winners for the 4 televised awards, I think at that point, honestly, I just for the sake of it, I will bump Cooler to number 1.
It's definitely a possibility. Yeah. Sorry, Carey Mulligan.
Oh yeah. She is the Vanessa Kirby of it all in here.
She is the Vanessa Kirby of it all this year.
Yeah, I was like, good job on getting in everywhere, and then ending up like last in every ballot. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. It's definitely the most interesting category by far of the acting categories. I'm excited to see how it plays out.
Yeah.
I will have a lot more thoughts before the final night, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on to Best Director.
Mm.
Speaking of heavy hitters and Anatomy of a Fall, we have Justine Triet from Anatomy of a Fall, Martin Scorsese, Killers of the Flower Moon, Christopher Nolan, Oppenheimer, Yorgos Lanthimos, Poor Things, and Jonathan Glazer, The Zone of Interest.
Um, Again, kind of like supporting actor, we knew we were going to lose a couple of names. I think the hardest thing I think became sort of like deciding who is the big name that drops out.
Yeah,
And
I
then at that point, like your guess was as good as mine, honestly.
yeah I
Yeah.
I I predicted the Pain snub, I will say, but
Mhm. Yeah, I
predicted
didn't.
I predicted Gerwig over Triet, so I was dumb there.
Oh, okay. I ended up, I think, taking Lanthimos out. And as I said, I stand by it. I don't think he's really in with a shot to win here.
Yeah,
And also because it's again a category where there's a very clear front runner,
yeah,
someone who hasn't won yet, who's behind one of the biggest movie events of the year. I I think it's pretty much a done deal for here in picture. I will say that if anything, he's not great at accepting awards, and it feels like most of his speeches were like written by ChatGPT or something. It's just like the most impersonal kind of by the number like acceptance speech that you could just concoct and just read out from like a piece of paper on stage. It's just
Mhm.
very, very, very boring and kind of like inconsequential. I don't think that's gonna matter. I don't think that's gonna matter. But I also think that there's a reason that he hasn't won one yet.
Yeah,
And a lot of it has to do with like the big sort of like movie directors that we all love and think fondly of. We think of them as not just directors, but also sort of like celebrities and like people. And everything they do outside of just being a director, like Scorsese and like his crusade to like, save independent, like foreign, like smaller movies, all that stuff. Nolan, what is Nolan doing?
right.
Like he doesn't have, so I'll put it this way, he does not have the same mystique as other past winners in this category, of which he is not a part
Right.
yet. So it's, I would say 90%, 90%, 95% is going to happen, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there's past anti-Nolan bias definitely is
Hmm.
on my mind too. I think this is his like welcome to the club kind of
Yeah,
year.
it feels like it. Yeah.
So I would be surprised if anyone else wins. I think Lanthimos is probably in fifth. Um,
Yeah,
if I had to pick one to be at the bottom, I think it's hard to say where Scorsese is.
I would say fourth.
I That's what I would say too, but then again, they do love him. So uh, I think somewhere, and I don't know who's ahead of Triet or Glazer. I think both are very, very strong.
I would say honestly, I would say Nolan number one. I would say like Triet and Glazer share like the podium for like second place, then
Yeah,
Scorsese, then Lanthimos.
yeah.
Glazer does have the fact that he's the director of the future foreign film winner, like going for him.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't know, it's just hard because yeah, Nolan seems to be pretty far out, but then there's been an anti sort of like there's been like an anti-Nolan bias that we've discussed in a lot of these sort of like prediction videos that we've made over the years where
Hmm.
like he didn't get in, or yeah, why do you explain the snub? There's clearly been a barrier between him and voters,
Yeah,
and we'll see if he's actually able to, break through.
yeah.
Yeah, it looks
Um,
like he will.
I think he will. The movie's just so big, but I
Yeah.
mean, there's always a chance that something happens.
I will
Um,
say though that I could definitely still see Oppenheimer win picture even if he doesn't win director.
oh yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And speaking of Best Picture, we have the PGA 10. After all
Hmm.
our hand wringing and everyone being like, we're wrong, it can't be the PGA 10. Everyone's predicting the
We were
PGA
right.
10. It was the PGA 10. So we have American Fiction, Anatomy of a Fall, Barbie, The Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, Oppenheimer, Past Lives, Poor Things, and The Zone of Interest.
Yeah, it's been all right with this category, and then I think in the end we all ended up being right, just
Yeah.
because the drop off between 10 and 11th was so huge
Yeah, I don't even.
that it became hard to sort of like create a path for other stuff to kick stuff out.
Yeah, I don't even know what 11th would have been. Um,
Salt? No, not even Saltburn, honestly. I don't know. May
uh,
December? I don't know.
Naya. I don't know.
If if Nayad was like in here, if we're talking about it like, one of the 10, banning would be like, yeah,
Yeah, then
a
would
different conversation.
a
Yeah.
different conversation. But
But
yeah,
it's
I
not.
think Oppenheimer is pretty far out front. I don't
Yeah.
see anything stopping it at this
No.
point. I mean, we'll check in after SAG, of course, and check in after BAFTA, but right now it seems comfortably out front. I would say coming in second is, I might actually, probably maybe The Holdovers is the number two.
You are correct. I agree.
Uh, and because there's just a lot of love, and it's cresting. Even though it didn't get the director nomination and didn't get Sessa in, there's still, it got the editing nomination.
It's gonna win. It's probably gonna win 2 acting
Yeah.
Oscars. So
And then I think
yeah.
the next tier we have is Anatomy of a Fallen Zone.
Yeah.
Those are both really strong right now.
Poor Things also, I think I would say
Poor
on
Things
that.
has bumped up. I think
Yeah,
Killers is out of the top five.
I think so. That's why I was asking you, like, do you think these are when we talk about editing? Because yeah,
I think, yeah, Killers, the more I think about it, is definitely out of the top five. It just came out too early, it crested too soon, and it just was
didn't
too,
didn't get screenplay. Yeah,
yeah, it was too complicated of beauty. I don't know if that makes sense. It was just there's too many things going on that were holding it back from being a good movie. I think that
yeah,
people got hung up on.
yeah.
Um, and then I think American Fiction's probably right after that.
Hmm.
And then towards the bottom we have uh, Barbie, Maestro, and Past Lives is how I would organize them.
Yeah, and I think we were living in a space at some point where like Past Lives was in our top 5, and then that did not really
It had a moment.
happen.
The
Yeah, it
National
did.
Society of Film Critics in Seattle, like it had this surge, this moment, and then
Yeah, but that's why I'm always like with critics, you kind of need to sort of like take it at face value.
mm,
You kind of do it helps. You want to be winning these like critics awards for sure.
yeah,
For
I,
sure.
I,
But yeah.
I think getting bodied by Anatomy at the Globes was the the death knell for it. So losing international film and screenplay at the Globes.
Which honestly, I think even the fact that it was eligible for international film just really hurt it from the get-go.
Yeah,
Because it became an excuse to actually not find a space for it in the different best picture lineups.
right.
And that's not good. That's not what you want to be happening when you're trying to actually sneak. I mean, because also there was like an argument to be made that Song was in contention for director at some point.
Yeah, she was definitely a name that was being floated in like the sixth, seventh spot.
So yeah, I mean, all of that just yeah. And I honestly do not think that should have been allowed. Yeah, it
Mm,
is. It is just what difference it ended up making in the end. It's just yeah, why? Yeah,
right. And so now it has two nominations: Best Picture and Screenplay.
yeah.
Um, so it definitely had a May December esque fall. Not quite as
Mm-hmm.
far a fall,
Not quite
but
as hard, yeah.
um,
Although I will say that the actors also ended up sort of like, the short end of the stick. Because I'm sure that at some point in like different iterations of my predictions, I had Leon, I had Ewan. It it was not out of the realm of possibility that could happen. But yeah, it did not do what it needed
yeah,
to
it it was always kind of swimming around
do. Hmm.
some of the categories, and it
Hmm.
just couldn't get in. I think just the combination of other movies surging as it kind of petered out.
It's just
Yeah,
hard when you're in the best picture conversation, but you're not in the top five, and your cast is not in like the top three.
right.
And your screenplay is, yeah, up there, but not at the top, and you don't really have a standing in the tech categories. It's hard. It's just hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but it did make it into Best Picture, so there's not
It did,
nothing.
and yeah, I think I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I think that for the lineup that we're looking at, where I think more than half of these movies are movies that I would not um really ever entertain watching again. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
But again, at this point, I think Oppenheimer is the sturdy front runner.
yeah. I don't know
Uh,
what would need to happen, honestly,
yeah,
for that to change.
because
Yeah.
SAG Ensemble doesn't matter. I don't think it needs to win there.
It matters, but it doesn't matter as much as it used to. These past few years, there's been Best Picture winners that weren't even nominated there, that it did not make
Yeah,
a difference. I think we need to take it for what it is. It is their version of Best Picture, but it's not. It's really not. It's
yeah,
the closest thing they have to that, but it's not really an award that's considering the merits of a picture. It's an award that's considering the merits of an ensemble.
right. And I think it
Yeah,
also is contingent year to year based on the front runners for Best Picture. Like, it can be a difference maker when it's a close race.
yeah,
When it's a like Oppenheimer is so out far out in front. So if like Barbie wins ensemble, it's not that's not helping Barbie at all.
yeah.
That's just congratulations on your gigantic cast.
Yeah, and I mean the same thing with Color Purple. I mean, clearly it gets nominated because there's a lot of talented people in it that
Hmm.
have a lot of colleagues that love them. Does it mean that the movie had a chance at Best Picture? No,
No,
it doesn't.
yeah. So I think it's SAG ensemble is really interesting because it definitely sometimes can be a difference maker, but it really is dependent on that specific race and the specific movies that are involved. Like who's nominated,
Every
who's
year,
not.
yeah,
Yeah,
every year it's a different conversation with it. And I'm always like sort of like, grain of salt because you have to. The equivalency that a lot of people make is just not as strong as I think
yeah,
reality suggests
yeah.
is.
Like for
Yeah.
example, Parasite winning there was a huge
Yes.
boost for it. Like that was a
Yes.
huge boost. That was a type of movie that needed that type of win. Um,
Because
Oppenheimer's,
it was like up here already in the best picture predictions, and then we're like, oh, people are actually serious about
yeah, exactly.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas I think Oppenheimer is not a movie that needs the same uh, affirmation to know that.
Yeah, and the ensemble just feels very spread out. Also,
Yeah,
it's like there's a lot of people, but they don't have a lot to do.
a lot of suits just being like, hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Even Downey Jr., who's winning supporting actor, his role is really the last 20 minutes of the
Hmm.
movie, more or less, where he gets actually any insight into who this person is.
Hmm.
That's it. So I mean, it's a really long movie with a lot of people in it. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But we'll see. We'll probably do when is SAG?
The 24th, I want to
Oh yeah, so we'll
say.
definitely do a SAG prediction pod.
We kind of need to, yeah.
Yeah, we'll dive into that when we get there. But that is all the categories. Besides the short ones, which we're not doing because
Sorry.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be back, of course, with like SAG predictions, BAFTA predictions. And we'll
Lots to
do
think about.
yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
probably do a SAG and BAFTA reactions.
Yeah.
And then of course our final predictions for Oscars, plus anything else we want to talk about. Because
That's gonna be the big one. Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Can't wait.
well, thank you for watching. Congratulations, America Ferrera.
Yes.
You boss bitched it all the way to
Yes,
Oscar
you
night.
did. Congratulations, Anne Warren. We'll never predict against you
for
ever.
for your song about IBS, the fire
Yes.
inside.
Yes.
All right. Until next time, we'll see ya.
Bye.
Bye.